The city lights flickered, like fading stars as a cold wind drifted through the narrow streets. Among the crowd of strangers, a man named Adrian Blackwell walked alone, his coat collar turned up, his hands buried deep in his pockets. Life had once been kind to him. He had been a successful architect, with dreams that reached the sky. But years of heartbreak had turned those dreams into quiet ruins. He had once had a wife who loved him deeply, and a son he adored more than anything. But one stormy night, fate had stolen both away. Since that night, Adrian had walked through life like a ghost in his own story. Surviving, not living. His apartment was small, filled with dust-covered blueprints of buildings that were never built. The city outside moved fast, but time inside his home stood still. His only companion was silence, and sometimes silence was louder than anything else. One evening, rain began to pour, tapping against the windows like soft reminders of everything he had lost. Adrian wrapped himself in his coat and stepped outside to clear his mind. The streets were nearly empty, except for the occasional sound of distant cars and footsteps. As he passed a flickering streetlight, he noticed a small figure sitting by the curb, a boy, soaked to the skin, shivering under the cold rain. His small hands clutched a torn backpack, and his bare feet were pressed against the wet pavement. Adrian stopped. "Hey, are you okay, kid?" he asked gently. The boy didn't respond at first, just looked up with wide, frightened eyes. "Where are your parents?" Adrian asked again. The boy's lips trembled. "I don't have any," he whispered. Adrian felt a sharp pain in his chest. He saw his younger self reflected in that boy, alone, lost, unwanted. Without another word, Adrian took off his coat and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. "Come with me," he said quietly. "You'll catch your death out here." The boy hesitated but nodded slowly. They walked together through the rain, the boy following closely, his small footsteps echoing. Softly behind Adrian's, when they reached Adrian's apartment. The warmth of the room felt almost magical to the boy. He looked around with wonder. It wasn't fancy, but it felt safe. Adrian made him a bowl of hot soup and handed him a towel. "What's your name?" he asked. "Eli," the boy replied softly. "Eli," Adrian repeated with a faint smile. "That's a strong name." The boy smiled shyly, clutching the warm bowl of soup. "Thank you," he whispered. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring at the rain outside, wondering why fate had brought this child to his door. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe life was giving him a second chance. Days passed. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the silence in Adrian's apartment faded away. Eli filled the space with laughter, with questions, with the sound of life. He would sit beside Adrian as he worked on old blueprints, asking what each line meant, why buildings needed strong foundations, why light mattered in design. Adrian, for the first time in years, found himself explaining things with passion. He had forgotten what it felt like to teach, to care, to feel alive. Every evening they would sit by the window together, Adrian telling stories about stars and dreams, and Eli listening like each word was a treasure. One afternoon, Eli came home from school with excitement. "Mr. Adrian, I got the highest score in drawing class," he said proudly, holding up a sketch of a tall building. Adrian looked at it closely and smiled. "That's beautiful," he said softly. "You've got the same eye I used to have." Eli grinned, not realizing how deeply those words touched Adrian. In time, Adrian began to notice little things. Eli's way of smiling, the dimple on his left cheek, the small scar above his eyebrow, all things that reminded him of someone he once knew. He tried to shake it off, but the resemblance was too strong. One night, while cleaning his old drawer, Adrian found something he hadn't looked at in years, a small silver locket. Inside was a picture of his late wife, Anna, holding their baby son. His heart ached as he ran his fingers over the photo. He didn't realize Eli had walked in behind him until the boy spoke. "That's my mom," Eli said softly. Adrian froze, turning around slowly. "What did you say?" Eli pointed to the picture. "That's her. She had that same necklace. She used to tell me about my dad before she died." Adrian's eyes filled with tears. He looked back at the photo, at Anna's face, at the baby in her arms, and then at Eli. "Eli," he whispered, his voice trembling. "How old are you?" "I'll be 11 next month," the boy said quietly. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. It couldn't be a coincidence. His son would have been 11 now. He searched through his old documents, shaking hands, pulling out dusty police reports, hospital records, adoption notices. Hours later, he found it. A record from a shelter listing a child found by the river the night of the accident. The initials matched. The date matched. Everything matched. Adrian fell to his knees, overwhelmed. He turned toward Eli, tears streaming down his face. "You're my son," he said in a broken whisper. Eli blinked in disbelief. "What?" Adrian reached out, showing him the photo. "This is you. And that woman, she was my wife. Your mother." Eli's lips quivered. You're my dad?" Adrian nodded, unable to speak through the tears. The boy ran to him and hugged him tightly, sobbing. Adrian held him close, afraid to let go. Years of pain melted in that single moment. All the loneliness, all the regret, all the nights spent praying for a miracle. They all found meaning now. The rain outside stopped and the city lights glowed softly through the window. It felt like the world had paused just for them. Over the next few weeks, their lives changed completely. Adrian officially adopted Eli again, restoring his name, his identity, his family. They spent hours talking about the past, about Anna, about how life had separated them only to bring them back together stronger. Adrian taught Eli architecture, and Eli taught Adrian how to laugh again. The apartment that once echoed with silence now rang with laughter and warmth. They planted a small tree on the balcony, naming it Hope. Every morning, Eli watered it before school, saying it reminded him of his mom. As months went by, Adrian took on a new project, designing a community center for orphaned children. He wanted it to be a place where no child would ever feel as lost as Eli once did. He poured his heart into every line, every wall, every window. The day it was completed, he named it Anna's Light. During the opening ceremony, Adrian stood beside Eli, now full of pride and joy. Reporters asked him why he built it, and Adrian smiled, looking at his son. "Because kindness can build homes," he said, "and love can rebuild lives." The crowd applauded, but Adrian only looked at Eli, grateful for the miracle that life had given him back. That night, as they returned home, Eli curled up on the couch with a blanket and fell asleep. Adrian watched him for a long time, then turned toward the window. The same streetlight that once flickered lonely now shone brighter than ever. He whispered quietly to himself, "Maybe some lights never really fade. They just wait to be found again." And for the first time in many, many years, he finally felt like he was home.